Hola, hola, ¿qué tal? Buenos días. Buenos días.
Hola, buenos días,
profe.
Hola.
Buenos días, profe.
Bueno, ok, vamos partiendo a abrir algunas cositas, especialmente la... Okay. Están viendo la pantalla, ¿cierto?, de aula.
Sí.
Ok, gracias. Bueno, ayer tuvimos ¿cierto? Pasamos más o menos por cada una de las unidades, habían algunas cosas que había agregado. Y hoy día, ¿cierto?, vamos a ver algunos videos y comentar el tema del liderazgo. Yo les comentaba ayer que cómo hacer que la gente te siga. Es un video casi de 1 hora. Hoy día vamos a ver los primeros 15 minutos y vamos a terminar viendo los últimos 15 minutos de un video realmente interesante de escuchar. Primero la pregunta del millón. ¿Alguien de los que está presente vio ese video el día de ayer en la tarde? Vuelvo a preguntar, ¿alguien vio este video ayer en la tarde, después de la clase?
¿Ese es el de Simón Sinek, profe?
Sí, mijito, sí.
Yo lo vi como la semana antepasada.
¿Lo viste la semana antes pasada?
Sí.
Profe, y Vladimir me está diciendo que él lo vio, pero parece que tiene malo el micrófono.
Ah, bueno.
Es bastante bueno.
Bastante bueno, ¿cierto? Entonces hoy día
Pues
lo vamos a compartir un ratito, los primeros 15 minutos, y vamos a terminar con los últimos 15 minutos, porque son realmente interesantes de escuchar, ¿cierto? La forma como él habla del liderazgo en las organizaciones y finalmente termina, ¿cierto?, con un análisis de los jóvenes milenios. Y veíamos ayer también, ¿cierto?, en otra de las unidades, en la unidad 3, veíamos este tema del hablar en público. Ayer tuvimos la oportunidad de ver un video, que el que está aquí, ¿cierto?, el cómo hablar en público con naturalidad y profesional. Y yo obviamente he rescatado las 5 información más importante. Hablar siempre de lo que sabe, qué sé. Y esto lo hice en cada uno de las audios. Yo he escuchado los audios, ¿cierto? Y copié lo más relevante. Independientemente que aquí está lo más relevante escrito, de todas maneras, ¿cierto?, yo les aconsejo ver el video, ¿eh? Ver el video. Lo que tengo yo escrito acá es un recordatorio de lo más importante, de lo que aparece, ¿cierto?, en el audio. Así que yo los aconsejo sí o sí ver el video. Los errores graves en hablar en público, ahí están los errores más graves que uno muchas veces comete, sabiendo que no debe hacerlo, igual lo hace, ¿cierto? Pero esto la idea es que nosotros, productos de este aprendizaje, ¿cierto? O de esta información que nos entrega don Sebastián Lora, seamos capaces, al menos durante este semestre, de que ustedes no digan, oye, a mí nadie mientras estaba en la universidad me motivó, me incentivó, nunca me lo dijo, nadie me lo comunicó, que era importante hablar en público, que era importante, ¿cierto? Obviamente, caerle bien a las personas, cómo ser una persona empática, cómo vencer mi timidez. Es decir, esas cosas ya son del pasado, ¿no? Hoy día están todas YouTube es particular, ¿cierto? Con todos los videos de lo que uno quiera aprender, ¿cierto? O escuchar o ver, los va a encontrar en la página de YouTube. ¿Sí? Así que esto es mi aporte, fuera de que ustedes sí o sí tienen que ver los videos. Ok, vamos a la unidad 5. La unidad 5, ¿qué tiene? Este tema de los juegos, del aprender.
Profe, permiso.
Dígame, hijo.
Yo tengo una duda. Lo que nos van a evaluar es ver esos videos o nos van a evaluar ver los videos y ver los materiales que ha subido Aula, como los PDF y eso.
No, yo te voy a evaluar en el primer control, yo te voy a evaluar el 100% de los PDF. Todos los videos que yo te he colocado es para que tú los veas, lo internalices el concepto, veas temas de interés desde el crecimiento personal y desde el tema cultural. Todos los videos que tengan que ver ahí, no, en absoluto van a ser evaluados. Solamente en el primer control van a ser evaluados todos los PDFs. En el segundo control van a ser evaluadas todas las películas, las 22 películas. Y en el tercer control, ¿cierto? Es la actividad que ustedes sí o sí van a llevar a cabo entre los diferentes equipos que se configuren en los 3 paralelos. ¿Mm? Todos los videos que hay acá, la única finalidad, vuelvo a insistir, es entregar la información para que ustedes mejoren como personas, sepan de lo que se trata de ciertas cosas que están direccionadas por personas de la neurocirugía, de tal manera de que ustedes de una otra manera tengan tema de conversación, ¿no? Antes de ir a esto, voy a pasar por ahí. Okay. Aquí, pues, tal cual. Los listados de video, de oratoria, de los BBA, aprendemos juntos. Ahí hay varios que yo ya liberé la semana pasada, durante ustedes estaban en recesión, los liberé. Y está liberado en AMET, cómo convertirnos en personas que queremos ser. Está de la señora Irene Villa, cuando ser fuerte es la única opción. Esto está liberado. ¿Ok? Esos dos están liberados. El de Manuel Campos, hablar en público es un privilegio. El de Tony Nadal, el valor del esfuerzo. El de Carol Beck, hijos, aprendan con mentalidad de crecimiento. Luris Santos, ser feliz no consiste en sonreír, siempre pensar en positivo. Eso están todos liberados. Entonces, lo que tú preguntaste, Jesús, y es parte de lo que yo coloco acá, voy liberando para no, yo podría haberlo liberado todo, ¿cierto? Y yo prefiero ir liberando de a poco, para que cuando ustedes ingresen a la aula, ingresen a esta unidad, vean este video que está aquí, cómo convertirnos en personas que queremos ser, y lo vean porque el mensaje, la historia que hay detrás de esta persona es maravillosa. Pregunta del millón, ¿quién la vio? De los que están al otro lado de la... ¿Quién vio ese video? ¿Cómo convertirnos en personas que queremos ser? ¿Quién lo vio? ¿Quién vio el de la Irene Villa, cuando ser fuerte es la única opción? ¿Quién vio el de Manuel Campos? Hablar en público es un privilegio.
Profe, ahí me está diciendo Vladimir que vio los dos videos que dijo.
¿Qué Vladimir?
Vladimir Barra.
Ya. Ok. Ah, tiene problemas Vladimir con su micrófono.
Sí.
Ok, ok. Y vuelvo a insistir. El de Tony Nadal. Es muy probable que también Vladimir lo haya visto. Y es probable que Vladimir lo haya visto todos. Pero Vladimir, ¿cierto? No es el 100% de las personas que están ahí. Hoy en este momento hay 18 personas que están escuchando. Y al parecer es la única persona responsable Vladimir. ¿O es la única persona motivada es Vladimir? Porque si Vladimir lo ha visto todo y ustedes no han visto ninguno, estando ahí disponible a contar del lunes desde que inició el proceso de recesión. Entonces, a tu pregunta, Jesús, es la típica del chileno. Si no he evaluado, no lo leo, no me interesa. Tal como decía don Claudio Lucero allí. Ustedes siempre están ahí. ¿Cómo voy ahí? ¿Cómo voy ahí? ¿Cómo voy ahí? ¿Me comprometo o no me comprometo? No me comprometo más si no me lo va a evaluar. ¿Para qué lo voy a ver? ¿Para qué voy a perder el tiempo? Si no me lo va a evaluar. Sería muy tonto de mi parte leer algo que no me lo evalúan. Entonces, claro, el profesor pone a disposición del grupo humano, de los alumnos de este curso, información tremendamente potente. Por las cosas que dicen, cómo lo dicen estas personas, cuál es su experiencia, ¿cierto?, de vida que han tenido. Y uno considera que es una cosa interesante que los jóvenes, al menos los jóvenes de mi clase, tuvieran la posibilidad cierta de verlos y poder comentarlo, ¿cierto?, con los familiares, con los amigos, etc. Pero caemos nuevamente en el tema de don Claudio Lucero. Ustedes no son comprometidos. Sí, no me interesa leerlo. ¿Tiene alguna respuesta a lo que yo le estoy indicando, Jesús?
No.
No, ¿cierto? Entonces, don Emilio es estricto. No. Cacho el mote. Cacho de la flojera endémica del estudiante, del joven estudiante actual. Y eso no debe de ser. Todo lo que uno sube físicamente en la página de aula, la finalidad última es que lo vean, lo lean. Sea evaluado o no sea evaluado. Esa es la responsabilidad del estudiante. No, yo leo solo lo que me van a evaluar. Estamos mal. Estamos muy mal. Vuelvo al tema de la unidad 5. El ajedrez, ¿cierto? Y el cubo Rubik. Ambas cosas van a ser evaluadas. El ajedrez, ¿cierto? Con un 10% de la nota final. Y el cubo Rubik también va a ser evaluado. Es decir, aquí hay un 20% de la nota entre el ajedrez y el cubo Rubik. No cabe la menor duda, ¿cierto? Si yo no pusiera notas en estos juegos, la probabilidad de que ustedes practicaran ajedrez o jugaran al cubo Rubik, no lo harían. No lo harían. ¿Para qué lo voy a hacer si no me lo van a evaluar? Hay que ser muy caído el cache para aprender a jugar ajedrez si no me lo evalúan. O armar el cubo si no me lo evalúan. ¿Para qué lo voy a hacer? Ok, entonces nos encontramos con ajedrez, el cubo Rubik, ¿cierto? Y aquí existen las noticias apasionantes del mundo del ajedrez. Y otro link, ¿cierto?, que habla sobre el Cristóbal Enrique, ¿cierto?, que es el mejor ajedrecista a nivel nacional, de 24 años. ¿Ok? Pregunta del millón. ¿Quién de las personas, de estas 19 personas, ha leído a esta Leoncho García, el ajedrez es el mejor gimnasio para la mente? ¿Quién ha pinchado ese link y quién lo ha visto completo ese link? Okay. Voy a dejar de compartir esta página. ¿Ok? Don Ángel Trujillo. Ángel, ¿me escucha, hijo?
Sí, profe.
Ángel, de las cosas que yo vi ahora, pregunto, ¿no has leído nada de lo que yo mostré ahora en la página, hijo?
He leído los PDFs de liderazgo y una parte de ajedrez, pero no mucho.
¿Y qué razón tienes respecto a eso? ¿Qué razón tienes? ¿No has tenido tiempo?
No, es que no he visto en su totalidad todo, la verdad. Que estaba en otros cursos, en otros ramos.
Uh-huh. Ok, Ángel. Don Nicolás Mancilla, cuénteme, hijo, de lo que yo he mostrado, ¿qué cosas ha visto y lo ha leído?
Vi el tema del PDF de confianza, liderazgo y practicaba el ajedrez más que nada.
Yeah. Y de estos relatores de BD, de corta A, ¿no has visto nada de lo que está disponible ahí, hijo?
No, videos no, profe.
Videos no. ¿Alguna razón, Nicolás?
Quizás priorizo más otros ramos. Podría ser una. No una justificación, pero es una.
Ya. Gracias, Nicolás. La señorita Constanza Canales, cuénteme, hija.
Hola, profe.
Hola, Lola.
Nada, he leído los dos PDF, pero no he visto ningún video de los que esos de una hora, no los he visto.
¿Hay alguna razón, Constanza?
O sea, de partida que no me da el tiempo en realidad porque, bueno, hay hartas cosas que hacer, pero no es una justificación. Así que sin duda cuando tenga tiempo, me voy a hacer el tiempo en realidad y los voy a ver.
Gracias, hija. ¿Qué dice don Pablo Millar?
Hola, profe.
Hola, hijo.
¿Cuál es la pregunta?
De todos aquellos videos que están disponibles en aula, ¿qué cosas de esos videos que están disponibles has visto?
Ninguno, pero sí he leído.
Gracias, Pablo. Cristóbal Muñoz, cuénteme, hijo.
¿Me escucha, profe?
Es perfecto, hijo.
Bueno, yo lo que he hecho es leer lo del ajedrez, los PDF y lo de los contenidos de la unidad, pero los videos que no he visto son esos de los que mostró usted, que son como de los tipos que hablan. Más que nada es como que los de cómo hablar en público y esas cosas así. Eso lo he visto. Eso lo he visto. Sí. Creo que los he visto todos, pero igual como que no me acuerdo mucho porque Me olvidé igual algo de lo que hice, pero igual he captado bien todo.
Ujú. Hola. Constanza Holguín, ¿me escucha, hija? Constanza. Ok. Cristina Río, cuénteme, hija. ¿Qué cosa ha visto de lo que está físicamente en aula, hija? Señorita Cristina Ríos. Señorita Gabriela Santana.
Yo, profe, aprendí a armar el cubo y me he leído solamente los 2 PDF, no he visto ningún video, la verdad.
Gracias, Gabriela. Ok. ¿Qué puedo decirle, pues, chiquillo? ¿Qué le puedo decirle, pues, chiquilla? Frustrante. Frustrante. Don Jesús Merzulí, cuénteme, hijo.
Sí, profe, ¿se escucha?
Perfecto.
Profe, yo me he leído los PDF y vi los videos de confianza y estoy viendo los videos como por unidad lo que sale en aula. Ya estoy viendo los videos de puede ser Carol Lucero y el de Jordan, pero es que son muy largos. Pero igual tengo que terminar de verlos.
Ok, Jesús. Daniel, cuénteme, hijo, ¿qué ha visto usted? Daniel Muñoz.
Bueno, disculpe. Realmente no me pude poner mucho con los videos, especialmente los que mostró ahora. Y por ejemplo, el video de ajedrez yo no me había dado cuenta que estaba. Yo me había puesto a jugar ajedrez con mi papá para practicar. Pero me he puesto el día con los PDFs que pedía para aceptarme en uno y también con con uno de los videos de liderazgo, que incluso con los que había compartido. Algunos de ellos ya los había visto antes.
Ya. Ok. Gracias, Daniel. Gracias, Daniel. Bueno, estamos acá, ¿cierto? Aquí está el video de don Leoncho García, el ajedrez como el mejor gimnasio. Están los cubos Rubik, ¿cierto? Para que ustedes aprendan a resolverlo. Aquí hay unos videos de unos logros de los jóvenes de la Universidad de Santa María, qué sé yo. Y este video sobre las noticias apasionantes del mundo del ajedrez, bueno, tienen que apretar el link, ¿cierto? Y se van a ir a una página donde les va a mostrar todas las noticias a nivel mundial de lo que hay detrás de este tremendo y apasionante juego. Voy a ir a ver el video que les acabo de comentar de liderazgo. Vuelvo a insistir. Vamos a ver los primeros 15 minutos. Está en inglés, con traducción, ¿cierto? En español, subtitulado. Y después, terminado, lo comentamos. ¿Lo ven? ¿Lo escuchan?
No.
Ok.
¿Está en aula todavía?
Sí, para allá voy, si no se haga problema, hijo.
On TED.com. His lessons on including the head lies, sort of those vague notions of.
¿Lo ven? ¿Lo escuchan?
Sí, profe.
Gracias.
Sí, profe.
Gracias. Vamos entonces, partamos.
Inside the minds of the world's most effective thinkers so that you can learn with ease what they have oftentimes learned with great difficulty. And if you pay attention, I promise you, our guests will help you acquire the behaviors and thought patterns you need to be successful in anything that you're trying to accomplish. All right, today's guest understands leadership, and I am not talking about from a features and benefits standpoint. I'm talking about from a Jedi-level, deep limbic system standpoint, the way that he combines an understanding of biology and psychology and, quite frankly, just the overall human condition, gives his insights unparalleled potency and usability, which you know I am obsessed with. His lessons on leadership ring true not only because he spent the better part of a decade systematically studying them, but because his transition from marketing consultant to evangelist for global change came as a result of a personal crisis. Having fallen out of love with the very company he created, he turned about with depression into a revolution of the self that has helped him become one of the most impactful voices in the world of leadership. His TED Talk on how great leaders inspire action through their why is the third most viewed talk of all time on TED.com. He's the two-time best-selling author whose ideology has captured the imagination of some of the most important leaders of our time, including the heads of many Fortune 500 companies, the US government, and multiple branches of the military, and the United Nations. Now, why is he so popular? Because his insights cut to the heart of what people crave in their leaders, an ability to create an environment that fosters trust and a feeling of emotional safety and the willingness to sacrifice themselves when necessary for the benefit of others. Please help me in welcoming the man whose own vision for the future is so inspiring, an army is rising up around him, and I very much include myself in that. The author of Together is Better, Start with Why, and Leaders Eat Last, the incomparable Simón Sinek. What a pleasure it is to have you on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Truly our pleasure, by the way. You've been a part of the lexicon of this company since we started, when we were a very small handful of people in a very lonely office in Compton. Our chief marketing officer, Nick Robinson, said, dude, this guy's written like exactly what we talk about here. You've got to see it. It codifies everything that we've sort of been bumbling around with. And first he made us watch your talk, the TEDx talk, which was amazing. And then he had us all read the book. And it really did formalize sort of those vague notions of what this needed to become for us. And so that became our mantra, like we need to understand our why, which forced us to really put language behind it, which has been just incredibly, incredibly instructive. And one of the goals of the show is to bring on people that I just owe a debt of gratitude, so I can say thank you.
That's nice of you.
So
thank you.
Thank you. It
You're welcome.
really, really has been amazing. So if it's amazing.
Thank
now,
you.
I haunted your Twitter feed.
Okay.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
And I wanted to start with something that you put on there, and you said, we can learn about our future from our past because regardless of technology or the speed of innovation, people are still people.
True.
The thing that I really found interesting is you seem to understand people. What are some key traits about just humans that every leader should know?
Well, I think one of the things that we forget is that we are a legacy machine working in a very different environment than we were designed for, you know? Our species sort of started showing up about 50,000 years ago. There were other hominid species that existed at the time. They died off, we survived. And it was those evolutionary traits that gave us the opportunity to outlive our competition, but also survive and thrive, even as the environment around us changed. We lived in populations that were never bigger than about 150 people for 40,000 of the 50,000 years that we've lived on this planet. It's only the past 10,000 years with farming that we've been living in populations that were larger than that. In other words, we're not made for this, which means all the rules of being human are exactly the same as they used to be when we were living in populations of about 150. And so if you can understand those things, you really understand what works and what doesn't work, regardless of the conditions. The fact of the matter is we are social animals, and we respond to the environments we're in, always. Our very survival depends on our ability to cooperate and trust with the people that we live or work with, right? You can take a good person and put them in a bad environment, and that person will do bad things. You can take a person who maybe the group doesn't trust, maybe they've even performed bad acts. You put them in a good environment, and they're capable of turning their lives around and becoming remarkable members of society. In other words, it's not the person, it's the environment. Leaders are responsible for that environment. And I think leaders forget that. Leaders think that they're responsible for the results. There's not a leader on the planet that is responsible for the results. A leader is responsible for the people who are responsible for the results. And if you take care of that, take care of the people, take care of the environment, things go just fine. You know, we're obsessed with this idea of like getting the right people on the bus, you know, as if it's this game that you just sort of keep changing people out, you know, some sort of mix and match or something. But we never ask which bus and who's driving the bus, right. You know, because it's not, the bus matters, you know. So I'm more obsessed with what happens to people when they come together in protected or unprotected environments and how we respond to those environments.
Yeah, that was a key insight for me. Like you say that you recursively ask why until you get to the point where you can't go backwards anymore. And that to me is one of those moments. Like when you understand that humans just by their nature, they react to their environment, all of a sudden it becomes pretty critical to think about the bus, right? Not only who's on the bus, but what is the bus, what's that environment? So I get it from a leadership perspective when you have rank, which you do a very good job of delineating between a leader and rank. Help people understand how if you don't have rank, how you could still be a leader for change in an environment that needs change.
So as you said, leadership has nothing to do with rank, right? Leadership is a responsibility. As you gain rank, you may have more responsibility over the lives of more people, but it doesn't change the nature of leadership. I know many, many people who sit at the highest levels of organizations who are not leaders. They have authority, and we do as they tell us because they have authority over us, but we wouldn't follow them. And yet I know many people who've made a choice, who have no rank, but they've made a choice to look after the person to the left of them and look after the person to the right of them. And we would follow them anywhere. And that's what leadership is. It's the responsibility to take care of the people around us, the people with whom we work. And leadership is a practice like any other. It is a skill that can be learned. And that means it requires practice. You don't just suddenly get a promotion, you're now in a management position and you're a leader, right? That's not how it works. If only, right? If only, I know. The reality is we have to learn it and we have to practice it and we have to get good at it, which is what the junior ranks are for. So even if you don't have the ability to make decisions that will impact the entire organization, you do have the ability to make decisions that will impact the life of another human being, how they feel about their own jobs, how well their responsibility goes, how easily they can get work done, how supported they feel if they make a mistake. You know, do they feel that they can turn to you and ask you for help? That's all within your control. It's the same thing as being in a relationship or being a friend. Being a good friend, you know, means that our friends can rely on us, they can trust us, they can turn to us. There's no difference. It's human beings, it's human relationships. At the end of the day, becoming a leader is about a transition. And everybody has to go through it if you want to become a leader. And as an aside, I will say, leadership is like parenting in the sense that everybody has the capacity to be a parent. Right. That doesn't mean everybody wants to be a parent, and that doesn't mean everybody should be a parent. Leadership is the same. Everyone has the capacity to be a leader. It doesn't mean everybody wants to be a leader, and it doesn't mean everybody should be a leader. Sure. And the reason is it comes with massive, massive responsibility. Sometimes people just don't want it. It's a lifestyle they choose not to have, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But if someone chooses that that is a lifestyle they would like to have, they would like to become a leader, then they have to acknowledge that they will or need to go through a transition. When we're very, very junior, the only thing we have to do is be good at our jobs. That's it, right? Some people go get advanced degrees in how to do their jobs, engineers or accountants. And if you're good at your job, they'll promote you. And eventually you'll get promoted to a position where you're now responsible for the people who do the job you used to do, but nobody teaches us how to do that. And we just expect them to be good at leadership, right? It's as if we put somebody in front of a machine and demanded results, but never showed them how to use the machine. Yeah. And so the reason we get managers, the reason we get micromanagers, the reason we get bad leaders is because nobody showed them how to do the job of leadership, for one. And two, they can't help themselves. Of course they're going to tell you to do it their way because they actually do know how to do it better than you, because that's what got them the promotion in the first place. Right. And the transition we have to make is that we are no longer responsible for the job. As I said before, we now become responsible for the people who are responsible for the job, right? There's not a manager around who's responsible for the results. We're responsible for the people who are responsible for the results. I love talking to CEOs, and I'm like, what's your priority? They say, my priority is my customer. I'm like, you haven't talked to a customer in 10 years. You know, you have no impact on a customer at all.
Right.
What you can do is screw with someone's life who will then impact your customer, or support someone who will then impact your customer.
Yeah, that's such
Right?
a powerful one.
Leaders are responsible for the people, who are responsible for the people, who are responsible for the people, who are responsible for the customer. Get that chain right. That is the chain of command. Get that chain right. And everything goes just fine. Get that chain wrong, and then the people who are touching the customer, inventing the product, selling the product, figuring out ways how to build the company, manage the numbers, manage the processes, manage the operations. In other words, all the heavy lifting. Right. Get that chain wrong, and those people will spend more time protecting themselves from you than doing their job. Yeah. Right? Any company, for example, where it is standard practice in that company for employees to feel the need to send a CYA email after every decision they make, is a sign that they're taking time and energy out of their job, away from advancing the company's mission in order to protect themselves from their own company. That's what that is. Any company where it is standard practice for people to feel the need to keep a folder of all the good things they've done in their careers just in case they need it, you know, is a sign that they're taking time and energy out of their day away from doing their job in order to protect themselves from their own leaders. That's what that is. Those are signs of bad leadership. Politics, gossip. All of these things are people acting out of self-interest. That's what politics and gossip is. Right? In well-led organizations, you tend to find very little politics and very little gossip, because we're not competing at that level. We're now working together to compete at a much higher level. I'll tell you one quick story. It's a true story that captures it just so perfectly. I was staying at the Four Seasons in Las Vegas, which is a wonderful hotel. And the service there is really great. The reason it's such a great hotel is because of the people who work there. And I had an experience with a young man by the name of Noah. And Noah's a barista in the coffee shop that they have just there in the lobby. And I was buying a cup of coffee, and Noah was charming and funny and engaging. And I think I gave 100% tip. I think my $5 coffee, I think I gave a $5 tip. I mean, this guy was great. I loved talking to him. He was a joy. And I asked him, do you like your job? He said to me, I love my job, without skipping a beat. Wow. And I asked, what is it that the Four Seasons is doing that you love your job so much? He says, without skipping a beat, he says, throughout the day, managers will walk past and ask how I'm doing and if there's anything that I need. He said, not just my manager, any manager. Wow. He says, I feel supported here. He says, quote, I can be myself, right? Then, it's magic. And then he says to me, I also work at Caesar's Palace. And there, the managers go around to make sure that we're doing everything right and catch us if we do something wrong. He says, when I go to work at Caesar's Palace, I keep my head just under the radar because I don't want to get in trouble. He says, I just want to get through the day and make a paycheck. Right? Wow. Same person. Right. The experience that I have at the Four Seasons will be diametrically opposite to the experience that I have at Caesar's Palace, not because of Noah, but because of Noah's leadership. Right. And the joke is, if I were to go talk to the managers over at Caesar's Palace and say, you know it's you, they'll say, but you don't understand, we cannot get good work out of our people. Look, no matter how hard we try and how hard we push them, they just don't, so we either have to replace them or push them harder. No. We respond to the environments we're in. Get the environment right, you get the right behavior. Get the environment wrong, you get the wrong behavior. If that is what is happening, it is because of leadership, not because of the people.
Yeah, there was a really famous cartoon back in the 80s, The Beatings Will Continue Until the Morale Improves. Yeah. Yeah, I always thought that was hilarious because it's so terrifyingly accurate.
And astonishingly, look, I'm embarrassed that I have a career. You know, I talk about things like trust and cooperation. Why is there demand for my work, you know? But the fact that there is, I'll take it as an opportunity. Yeah. But what's really sort of abominable is that this is not a new idea. Like, there are books galore and speeches galore and articles galore about what leadership is. You know, and we all kind of say the same thing from a different angle, so you can pick your flavor, whichever message resonates most with you, and yet people don't do it. What's the hang-up? And so I get this question a lot, which is, what are the most important characteristics about being a leader? You know, vision, charisma, you know? I know some spectacular leaders who don't have big Steve Jobsian visions. They're just not visionary, you know? And I know some spectacular leaders who really don't have a lot of charisma. They kind of just shuffle around, and you're like, that's the guy. Like, that's the guy, right? And they're spectacular, and people will give blood, sweat, and tears for these people. The one thing I am comfortable saying that all effective leaders must have is courage, because it is hard. It is hard to stand up against outside pressure. It is hard to stand up to an external constituency who's pushing you to do something for their short-term gain, to do the right thing for your people. It is hard. It is thankless. It is lonely. Sometimes you get fired. Sometimes you get in trouble. Sometimes you'll lose your job, and the next guy will get all the credit. It's all true. And the courage to do the right thing in the face of overwhelming pressure, only the best leaders have that courage. Only the best leaders. And here's the folly. Courage is not some deep internal fortitude. You don't dig down deep and find the courage, right? It just doesn't exist. Courage is external. Our courage comes from the support we feel from others. In other words, when you feel that someone has your back, when you know that the day that you admit you can't do it, someone will be there and say, I got you. You can do this. That's what gives you the courage to do the difficult thing. It's not going off to an ashram by yourself somewhere for 4 weeks and coming back and finding the courage. It's not what happens. It's the relationships that we foster. It's the people around us who love us and care about us and believe in us. And when we have those relationships, we will find the courage to do the right thing. And when you act with courage, that in turn will inspire those in your organization to also act with courage. In other words, it's still an external thing. That's what inspiration is, right? I'm inspired to follow your example. But those relationships that we foster over the course of a lifetime will not only make us into the leaders we need to be and hope we can be, but they'll often save your life. They'll save you from depression, they'll save you from giving up, they'll save you from any matter of negative feelings about your own capabilities, your own future. When someone just says, I love you, and I will follow you no matter what.
Why do you, so I want to talk about that for a second. Why do you think that something so innate, so deeply ingrained in us as love is so, like just yesterday, I can't believe this is true, this is actually true, I'm not making this up. Just yesterday, this will mean something to you guys, I looked Ron Penna in his eyes and I said, I love you. And I said it like 100%, is my business partner, I said it 100% sincerely. It was just one of those moments where you want to connect and remember. But that's so weird, like I don't do that often. And it's so interesting that...
Bien, vimos casi 18 minutos, 18 minutos de esta entretenida y potente presentación. Espero que vuelvan a verla completa, ¿cierto? Yo me voy a posicionar más adelante para que escuchemos de lo que habla de este grupo de jóvenes llamado Milenio.
Than the priorities of some disinterested external constituency, then we will respond in kind, and we will offer our blood and our sweat and our tears, and we will make sacrifices of all kinds to see that our leader's vision is advanced and that this company continues to thrive. Not for them, for ourselves. It becomes deeply personal. It becomes something we love contributing to. I talk about it all the time. Working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. And I'm tired of listening to CEOs saying, we only hire passionate people. You don't even know what that means. How do you know that they're passionate for interviewing and not passionate for working? Every person on the planet has passion, right? We just don't all have passion for the same things. Give me something to believe in. Give me something to believe in. Give me the opportunity to contribute to something. Allow me to make mistakes and try again. And you'll have passion up the wazoo. But Noah only has passion in one of his jobs. He has stress in the other one of his jobs. Same guy, different leadership.
Yeah, that rings so true with what I know about human nature. The first time I heard you talk about this, It's just one of those things that whenever something lines up with what I know to be true about the way that the human mind works, it's like, okay, now I know that I'm really onto something. And when you have told stories of companies that have weathered storms and how that trust goes both ways, and when people feel looked after, it makes a lot of sense. And then I had never heard prior to you that the way the business has evolved was a theory that was laid out, only 30, 40 years ago max. And I can really feel a change that's happening in the world now, and it's such a cool time to be involved in a rapidly growing company that has a huge portion of young people in the company, because the demand that you're saying that people need to be made, there's something in the youth today that allows them to cry for their humanity. And I don't know if they yet know the words that you're giving them, but you nodded your head in a way. I want to hear what you're thinking.
I have yet to give a speech or have a meeting where somebody doesn't ask me the millennial question.
What's the millennial question?
Apparently, millennials as a generation, which is a group of people who were born approximately 1984 and after, are tough to manage. And they're accused of being entitled and narcissistic and self-interested, unfocused, lazy. But entitled is the big one. And because they confound leadership so much, what's happening is leaders are asking the millennials, what do you want? And millennials are saying, we want to work in a place with purpose, love that. We want to make an impact, whatever that means. We want free food and beanbags. And so somebody articulates some sort of purpose, there's lots of free food and there's beanbags, and yet for some reason they're still not happy. And that's because they're missing, there's a missing piece. What I've learned is that I can break it down into 4 pieces, right? There are four things, 4 characteristics. One is parenting, the other one is technology, the third is impatience, and the fourth is environment. The generation that we call the millennials, too many of them grew up subject to, not my words, failed parenting strategies, where, for example, they were told that they were special all the time. They were told that they could have anything they want in life, just because they want it, right? They were told, some of them got into honors classes, not because they deserved it, but because their parents complained. And some of them got A's, not because they earned them, but because the teachers didn't want to deal with the parents. Some kids got participation medals. You got a medal for coming in last, right? Which the science we know is pretty clear, which is it devalues the medal and the reward for those who actually work hard. And it actually makes the person who comes in last feel embarrassed because they know they didn't deserve it, so it actually makes them feel worse, right? So you take this group of people, and they graduate school, and they get a job, and they're thrust into the real world, and in an instant, they find out they're not special, their moms can't get them a promotion, that you get nothing for coming in last, and by the way, you can't just have it because you want it, right? And in an instant, their entire self-image is shattered. And so you have an entire generation that's growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations. The other problem, to compound it, is we're growing up in a Facebook, Instagram world. In other words, we're good at putting filters on things. We're good at showing people that life is amazing even though I'm depressed, right? And so everybody sounds tough, and everybody sounds like they got it all figured out. And the reality is there's very little toughness, and most people don't have it figured out. And so when the more senior people say, well, what should we do? They sound like, this is what you got to do. And they have no clue, right? So you have an entire generation growing up with lower self-esteem than previous generations, right? Through no fault of their own. Through no fault of their own, right? They were dealt a bad hand, right? Now let's add in technology. We know that engagement with social media and our cell phones releases a chemical called dopamine. That's why when you get a text, it feels good, right? So, we've all had it where you're feeling a little bit down or feeling a bit lonely, and so you send out 10 texts to 10 friends, hi, 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 because it feels good when you get a response, right? Right? It's why we count the likes. It's why we go back 10 times to see if my Instagram is growing slower. Did I do something wrong? Do they not like me anymore, right? The trauma for young kids to be unfriended, right? Because we know when you get a hit of dopamine, which feels good. It's why we like it. It's why we keep going back to it. Dopamine is the exact same chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, when we drink, and when we gamble. In other words, it's highly, highly addictive, right? We have age restrictions on smoking, gambling, and alcohol, and we have no age restrictions on social media and cell phones, which is the equivalent of opening up the liquor cabinet and saying to our teenagers, hey, by the way, this adolescence thing, if it gets you down. But that's basically what's happening. That's basically what's happening, right? That's basically what happened. You have an entire generation that has access to an addictive, numbing chemical called dopamine through social media and cell phones as they're going through the high stress of adolescence. Why is this important? Almost every alcoholic discovered alcohol when they were teenagers. When we're very, very young, the only approval we need is the approval of our parents. And as we go through adolescence, we make this transition where we now need the approval of our peers. Very frustrating for our parents, very important for us. It allows us to acculturate outside of our immediate families into the broader tribe, right? It's a highly, highly stressful and anxious period of our lives, and we're supposed to learn to rely on our friends. Some people, quite by accident, discover alcohol and numbing effects of dopamine to help them cope with the stresses and anxieties of adolescence. Unfortunately, that becomes hardwired in their brains, and for the rest of their lives, when they suffer significant stress, they will not turn to a person, they will turn to the bottle. Social stress, financial stress, career stress, that's pretty much the primary reasons why an alcoholic drinks, right? What's happening is because we're allowing unfettered access to these dopamine-producing devices and media, basically it's becoming hardwired, and what we're seeing is as they grow older, too many kids don't know how to form deep, meaningful relationships. Their words, not mine. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial. They will admit that their friends, that they don't count on their friends, they don't rely on their friends, they have fun with their friends, but they also know that their friends will cancel on them if something better comes along. Deep, meaningful relationships are not there because they never practice the skill set, and worse, they don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. So when significant stress starts to show up in their lives, they're not turning to a person, they're turning to a device, they're turning to social media, they're turning to these things which offer temporary relief. We know, the science is clear, we know that people who spend more time on Facebook suffer higher rates of depression than people who spend less time on Facebook, right? These things balanced. Alcohol is not bad, too much alcohol is bad. Gambling is fun, too much gambling is dangerous, right? There's nothing wrong with social media and cell phones. It's the imbalance, right? If you're sitting at dinner with your friends and you're texting somebody who's not there, that's a problem. That's an addiction. If you're sitting in a meeting with people you're supposed to be listening to and speaking, and you put your phone on the table, face up or face down, I don't care, that sends a subconscious message to the room that you're just not that important to me right now, right? That's what happens. And the fact that you cannot put it away is because you are addicted, right? If you wake up and you check your phone before you say good morning to your girlfriend, boyfriend, or spouse, you have an addiction. And like all addiction, in time, it'll destroy relationships, it'll cost time, and it'll cost money, and it'll make your life worse, right? So you have a generation growing up with lower self-esteem that doesn't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress, right? Now you add in the sense of impatience, right? They've grown up in a world of instant gratification. You want to buy something, you go on Amazon, it arrives the next day. You want to watch a movie? Log on and watch a movie. You don't check movie times. You want to watch a TV show? Binge. You don't even have to wait week to week to week, right? I know people who skip seasons just so they can binge at the end of the season, right? Instant gratification. You want to go on a date? You don't even have to learn how to be like, hey. You don't even have to learn and practice that skill. You don't have to be the uncomfortable one who says yes when you mean no and says no when you mean no, but yes when you don't have to swipe right. Bang, I'm a stud. Right? You don't have to learn the social coping mechanisms, right? Everything you want, you can have instantaneously. Everything you want, instant gratification, except job satisfaction and strength of relationships. There ain't no app for that. They are slow, meandering, uncomfortable, messy processes. And so I keep meeting these wonderful, fantastic, idealistic, hardworking, smart kids. They've just graduated school. They're in their entry-level job. And I sit down with them and I go, how's it going? They go, I think I'm going to quit. I'm like, why? They're like, I'm not making an impact. I'm like, you've been here 8 months. You know? It's as if they're standing at the foot of a mountain and they have this abstract concept called impact that they want to have in the world, which is the summit. What they don't see is the mountain. I don't care if you go up the mountain quickly or slowly, but there's still a mountain. And so what this young generation needs to learn is patience. That some things that really, really matter, like love, or job fulfillment, joy, love of life, self-confidence, a skill set, any of these things, all of these things take time. Sometimes you can expedite pieces of it, but the overall journey is arduous and long and difficult. And if you don't ask for help and learn that skill set, you will fall off the mountain, or you will, the worst case scenario, and we're already seeing it, the worst case scenario is we're seeing an increase in suicide rates, we're seeing an increase in this generation, we're seeing an increase in accidental deaths due to drug overdoses, we're seeing more and more kids drop out of school or take leaves of absence due to depression, unheard of. These are all, this is really bad. The best case scenario, those are all bad cases, right? The best case scenario is you'll have an entire population growing up and going through life and just never really finding joy. They'll never really find deep fulfillment in work or in life. They'll just waft through life and it'll be just, it's fine. How's your job? It's fine. It's the same as yesterday. How's your relationship? It's fine. Like that's the best case scenario. Which leads me to the fourth point, which is environment. Which is we're taking this amazing group of young, fantastic kids who are just dealt a bad hand. It's no fault of their own. And we put them in corporate environments that care more about the numbers than they do about the kids. They care more about the short-term gains than the long-term life of this young human being. We care more about the year than the lifetime, right? And so we are putting them in corporate environments that aren't helping them build their confidence, that aren't helping them learn the skills of cooperation, that aren't helping them overcome the challenges of a digital world and finding more balance, that isn't helping them overcome the need to have instant gratification and teach them the joys and impact and the fulfillment you get from working hard on something for a long time that cannot be done in a month or even in a year. And so we're thrusting to them in corporate environments, and the worst part about it is they think it's them. They blame themselves. They think it's them who can't deal. And so it makes it all worse. It's not. I'm here to tell them it's not them. It's the corporations. It's the corporate environments. It's the total lack of good leadership in our world today that is making them feel the way they do. They were dealt a bad hand, and I hate to say it, but it's the company's responsibility. Sucks to be you. Like, we have no choice, right? This is what we got, and I wish that society and their parents did a better job. They didn't. So we're getting them in our companies, and we now have to pick up the slack. We have to work extra hard to figure out the ways that we build their confidence. We have to work extra hard to find ways to teach them the social skills that they're missing out on. There should be no cell phones in conference rooms. None. Zero. And I don't mean the kind of like sitting outside waiting to text. I mean like when you're sitting and waiting for a meeting to start, this is what we all do. We all sit here and wait for the meeting to start. Meeting starting? Okay. And we start the meeting. No, that's not how relationships are formed. Remember we talked about it's the little things? Relationships are formed this way. We're waiting for a meeting to start and we go, how's your dad? I heard he was in the hospital. Oh, he's really good. Thanks for asking. He's actually at home now. Oh, I'm really glad. It was really amazing. I know, it was really scary for a while. That's how you form relationships. Hey, did you ever get that report done? Oh my God, no, I didn't. I'll help you out. Can I help you out with that? Really? That's how trust forms. Trust doesn't form at an event in a day. Even bad times don't form trust immediately. It's the slow, steady consistency. And we have to create mechanisms where we allow for those little innocuous interactions to happen. But when we allow cell phones in conference rooms, we just, okay, have the meeting. And then my favorite is like when there's a cell phone there and you go like this, you go. It rings and you go. I'm not going to answer that. Like, Mr. Magnanimous, you know? When you're out for dinner with your friends, like I do this with my friends. When we're going out for dinner and we're leaving together, we'll leave our cell phones at home. Who are we calling? Maybe one of us will bring a phone in case we need to call an Uber or take a picture of our meal.
That was what I was saying, come on.
I'm an idealist, but I'm not insane. You know?
Not a heathen.
I mean, it looked really good. We'll take one phone. And so it's like an alcoholic. The reason you take the alcohol out of the house is because we cannot trust our willpower. We're just not strong enough. But when you remove the temptation, it actually makes it a lot easier. And so when you just say, don't check your phone, people literally will go like this. And somebody will go to the bathroom, and what's the first thing we do? Grab the phone, because I wouldn't want to look around the restaurant for a minute and a half, you know? But if you don't have the phone, you just kind of enjoy the world. And that's where ideas happen. The constant engagement is not where you have innovation and ideas. Ideas happen when our minds wander and we go, and you see something, I bet they could do that. That's called innovation, right? But we're taking away all those little moments, right? You should not, and none of us should charge our phones by our beds. We should be charging our phones in the living rooms, right? Remove the temptation. You wake up in the middle of the night because you can't sleep, you won't check your phone, which makes it worse. But if it's in the living room, it's relaxed, it's fine. But it's my alarm clock. Buy an alarm clock. They cost $8, right? I'll buy you an alarm clock, right? But the point is we now, in industry, whether we like it or not, we don't get a choice. We now have a responsibility to make up the shortfall and to help this amazing, idealistic, fantastic generation build their confidence, learn patience, learn the social skills, find a better balance between life and technology, because quite frankly, it's the right thing to do.
Simon, thank you so much
pleasure.
for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. That was incredible. Absolutely amazing. Where can they find you?
It's ironic, isn't it? Well, you can find me on social media.
When you're not in a meeting.
So yeah, I'm in all the usual places, but I will tell you one thing. So I have a new book coming out in September. It's a thinly veiled plug, but what's
You've made them very happy.
But what's special about it is I wanted to produce something that no digital format could reproduce.
Interesting.
And so it's an illustrated quote book. It's beautifully illustrated. I was very sort of pushy about this, that I didn't want the illustrations done on a computer. They were done by hand. There's a song, Aloe Black, the singer, the Grammy-nominated singer. The book is called Together is Better, and he gave me a song that goes with it. And the music is at the back of the book, and it's actually, the lyrics are in his handwriting. It's actually his handwriting. And here's the best part. The book is scented. We scented it with a custom scent made by this amazing company called 1229, and they designed for me the scent of optimism.
All right.
So you smell the pages, and they smell like optimism, right? And the thing that I love about this is I can't do that in any ebook format. I wanted to create something that you had to physically engage with, and it's designed to be given as a gift. The first page says to you wanted to.
Bien. Nos queda un par de minutitos, ¿cierto? ¿Qué más puedo decir? ¿Qué más puedo decir? Un tremendo video, un tremendo mensaje. Espero que al menos a contar de hoy día, ¿cierto? Ya está disponible hace más de una semana y media ahí. De tal manera que lo puedan ver las veces que sea necesario, ¿cierto? Especialmente en el último tercio, ¿no? En el último tercio donde de una u otra manera toca una realidad, y una realidad a la cual uno no puede estar ajena, ¿no? Que es el fenómeno de ustedes. Y uno, claro, seteado, ¿cierto? En otra formación, en otra inmediatez, no es menor. No es menor porque de una u otra manera en ustedes descansa, ¿cierto?, todo el desarrollo futuro. Y en la medida de que ustedes sí o sí estén empoderados de todos los temas, no cabe la menor duda que van a hacer un tremendo aporte. ¿Ok? Y no pasen, como bien dice el relator, navegando por la vida, ¿no? ir a cualquier lugar a donde obviamente no, ustedes tienen que sí o sí mejorar la autoestima, ser un poco más pacientes, ¿cierto? Y dedicarle tiempo a las cosas que realmente son relevantes, que son importantes. Y no nos adoquemos, ¿cierto?, a esta famosa droga, la dopamina, que es una realidad y vino para quedarse. Pero también debemos saber manejarla, ¿ok? Y no estar, ¿cierto?, como bien decía él, metido en este mundo de redes sociales, que es donde mayoritariamente encontramos esta adrenalina o esta dopamina que nos pone, ¿cierto?, muy contentos. No, tenemos que empezar a relacionarnos de manera diferente. Y cuando uno que ha vivido o que nació en generaciones muy previas a las de ustedes, teníamos otra parada, vivíamos otras realidades. Por eso él dice, la responsabilidad y la culpa no es de ustedes. Una crianza, ¿cierto?, determinada, una tecnología disponible, a la cual obviamente nadie se puede abstraer, decir que no existen. No, nadie está pidiendo aquello. Pero bien, como bien dice el relator, cuando ustedes salgan de esta burbuja adolescente o del joven universitario e ingresen al mundo real, se van a encontrar que el mundo real es tremendamente rudo, tremendamente duro, ¿ok? Que no va a tener complacencia con ustedes. Las complacencias que puede tener algún académico, un profesor, en aceptar, en llevarle un mensaje de motivación, que chiquillos, pucha, ojalá puedan leer la información que uno le entrega en ARA y uno trata de motivarles para que cambien el switch, para que se pongan responsables, para que obviamente tomen aquellas cosas que sí o sí los van a enriquecer. Pero si ustedes no lo toman porque están seteados de una manera y van a seguir seteados en ese círculo vicioso de esta famosa droga de la dopamina, ¿cierto? Aquellas cosas que le hacen felices, pero que obviamente no apuntan a ningún lado, van a encontrarse con realidades muy, muy feas cuando salgan al mundo laboral. Porque ese líder con el cual ustedes se van a topar no siempre les va a hacer la vida placentera. O nadie les va a dar las facilidades, o nadie les va a abrir los espacios, ni nadie va a estar disponible para ustedes frente al primer berrinche que ustedes tengan. No. Se van a cerrar las puertas, se van a sentir minusválidos, no van a tener la herramienta como para enfrentar una discusión, un debate, no van a saber defenderse, ¿cierto? Porque los antecedentes, el cúmulo de información es menor. Porque todas aquellas cosas que uno le pone para que los vean, para que mejoren su experiencia y sean cada vez mejores personas y además se manejen de forma correcta en la sociedad, ustedes de una u otra manera les dan la espalda. Y eso obviamente, como dije al inicio de la clase, es frustrante. Es frustrante. ¿Ok? Pero eso pasa este año, pasó el año pasado y pasó el año antepasado. Sí, porque es de la generación del año 84 en adelante. ¿Ok? Entonces, claro, ustedes tienen que hacerse la autocrítica. ¿Ok? Tienen que hacerse la autocrítica. Señorita Pamela Mesa, cuénteme, hija, ¿qué le pareció lo que vio?
Hola, profe.
Hola, hija.
No, súper, como que súper real lo que dice y de hecho me sentí identificada con muchas de las cosas que describía como de nuestra generación.
Y en ese sentido, súper buena la crítica también, pues súper constructiva. Eso.
Gracias, Paloma, por tu... Don Ángel Trujillo, hijo, cuénteme.
Sí.
Dime, hijo, ¿qué le pareció el video?
La verdad me parece interesante cómo maneja el tema el señor, porque se nota su pasión sobre lo que hace. Cómo interpreta sus ideas y su dominio.
¿Y te sentiste identificado con este grupo de jóvenes?
Sí, un poco, la verdad.
¿Qué tan poco, hijo?
¿Cómo a qué se refiere?
¿No te sientes identificado con las observaciones que hacía el joven respecto a cómo el joven actual, ¿cierto? O este millennium enfrenta los procesos que está viviendo como adolescente? Ok, hijo. Nicolás, cuéntame, Nicolás Mancilla, hijo.
Hola, profe, hola.
Hola, hijo.
No, yo creo que tiene mucha razón con lo que dice de los jóvenes y la adolescencia. Me identifico.
¿Qué cosa es eso? ¿Qué cosa te identificó, Nicolás?
La dependencia del celular, mucho. De jugar, no sé, por ejemplo, con amigos virtuales igual, aunque suene raro. Eso también es cierto. Y no, de eso, que dependemos mucho de un aparato.
¿Y por qué? ¿Y qué hace? ¿Por qué, sabiendo los errores que se cometen estando en esa postura, hijo, uno no hace, o tú no haces el cambio, el switch, y direccionas hacia otra área, hacia el área de las relaciones interpersonales, generar otro tipo de relación con tus amistades, hijo?
O sea, igual en este último tiempo ha sido bien difícil, pero yo en tiempo libre igual soy de dejar el celular al lado y jugar. Soy más de sociabilizarme.
Ok, hijo.
Pero
Gracias.
así imposible.
Gracias, Nicolás. A ver, ¿qué me puede decir ahora don Jesús Merzulí? Cuénteme, Jesús, ¿qué le ha parecido el video, hijo?
Profe, ya yo el video lo había visto antes, pero igual hay cosas con las que no concuerdo con el señor. Por ejemplo, él tiene razón sobre el estrés que causan sobre los millennials, pero también los millennials tienen muchas preocupaciones, muchas cargas sobre ellos.
Sí.
Son la generación que vino después de las personas no tomaban en consideración lo del cambio climático, el peligro que le hacía al mundo, donde se vivían con muchos miedos de las preferencias sexuales y cuestiones. Creo que cargamos como mucho peso y mucha responsabilidad. Eso también deberías tenerlo en cuenta a la hora de decir ese video.
Bueno, como todo video y toda persona no tiene la verdad absoluta, pues Jesús. Yo creo que cualquier cosa, comentario, un video que tú veas, siempre existe la posibilidad de que el tipo no cubre, ¿cierto? Y él no es la palabra de Dios que está detrás de todo este fenómeno social. Él tiene una mirada, ¿ok? Una mirada que más o menos, un altísimo porcentaje de lo que él dice son cosas reales, son cosas tangibles. Que hay cosas que a lo mejor esta es lo que estamos viendo, se pudo haber evitado si se hubiese tomado algunas decisiones, etc. Ese es un tema que ya la vieja pasó, las situaciones se vivieron, estamos hoy día en el 2020 y con este 2020 tenemos que salir adelante con esta juventud que son ustedes, ¿cierto? Y para bien o para mal, ¿cierto? Son ustedes los que van a generar, ¿cierto?, los cambios en esta sociedad. Así que yo espero, don Cristóbal Muñoz, para despedirme. Cuénteme, hijo, ¿qué me pueda comentar? Cristóbal.
No, eso de la necesidad de depender de un aparato tecnológico para la juventud actual. Por el tema como de, ¿cómo decirlo? Como eso decía algo de la dopamina, como encontrar de manera más fácil acceder a eso mediante el uso de un aparato tecnológico.
Bueno, jóvenes, señoritas, los dejo, tienen una semana, espero que vean los videos que están disponibles, ¿cierto? De tal manera que la próxima semana podamos copuchar un poquito respecto a ello. Nos vemos el próximo lunes. Dígame.
Para la próxima semana, ¿hay algún video en particular que estaría bueno que viéramos? Aparte como de todos los que ya están.
Hija, todo aquello que ya están, tú entras, pasa por diferentes unidades, todos aquellos videos que tú no has visto, pincha, los veo, ten la certeza que lo vas a disfrutar, hija. No hay ningún video en específico que te recomiende.
Ya.
Chao, Paloma.
Chao.
Chao, chao. Chao, chao.
Chao, profe.
Chao a todos. Chao, mijito.
Chao, profe.
Chao, Lola.
Chao, profe.
Chao, Franco.
Chao, profe.
Chao, hijo.